Hello everyone, and welcome to another Instagram Live. For those of you that are new around here, I figured I would do a little intro since there's definitely some new faces around here. So I am Britt Chandler. I am the owner of Brand Strategy Co., and I'm a brand strategist, marketing strategist, and a brand photographer. And I specialize in helping entrepreneurs specifically with their online presence and their Instagram accounts and their Instagram presence. So today I'm actually going to be talking about how to share personal content on Instagram and where to decide where to draw the line as far as what's too personal versus what's a good vulnerability or authenticity to be sharing on Instagram. So hi guys. You guys all popped in here really fast. Thanks for watching. So before I dive into how to share personal content on Instagram, I want to bring up a couple of concerns that a lot of my clients and my fellow students and just like other creatives in the entrepreneurial industry kind of have expressed as far as like why they feel like they shouldn't be sharing personal things or why they're struggling with figuring out exactly how to do it. So a lot of my clients and students feel like it can feel really vulnerable. Like it's very scary to put yourself out there, to share fears or to share failures or just even like little tidbits about what's going on in their lives. So I know that's a really common thing that a lot of people deal with, especially with Instagram and feeling like you want to have the perfect feed, the perfect image. So to go the opposite direction and share really personal, sometimes even like struggles or difficulties, is definitely, it makes you feel vulnerable. So the other thing that people feel like they struggle with is they're not sure where to draw the line. Like what's too personal, what's too vulnerable, what's a little too detailed. Like how do they know how much they should be sharing with their audience and being the face of their brand and putting their personality out there onto their feed versus like what's going way too far, what's too personal of information to share with strangers, what information is beneficial as a business owner to be sharing versus what is way too much. So I will definitely be talking about that a lot. Because I know a lot of you guys really struggle with kind of finding that fine line of sharing on social media. And another concern that I get, or not even a concern, maybe like a question or a question I see very often is, what is the point of sharing personal information on Instagram or social media in general? Why should you put yourself out there? Why should you put your personality, your struggles, your fears, your story, your journey? Why should you put any of that information out there as a business owner? Why shouldn't you just be business, business, business all the time? And I'll be sharing that as well in a couple seconds. So really common questions, concerns, almost, I would say, objections to sharing personal content on Instagram. So if you guys feel any of those things, let me know in the chat. I would love to have some conversation going today. I feel like it's been a while since we had a really good chat going in here. And the other thing I wanted to mention, if you guys have questions about anything related to, sharing Instagram content, whether it's personal or like maybe the ratio of personal versus business, any questions that you have, throw them in the chat. I'm going to be doing the Q&A at the end, so I'll scroll up and catch all of the Q&As or all the cues that come through while I'm doing the live. So feel free to be active in the chat. I would love to hear from you guys. I create this content every week and I kind of just pull it out of my butt where I'm like, I think people want to hear about this. So if you have questions or real concerns or you saw somebody doing something on Instagram and you're wondering if it's a good idea, I would love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are, what your questions are. So any questions you have about Instagram in general or specifically sharing personal content on Instagram as a business owner, I would love to hear from you in the chat. And the other thing I wanted to mention is if you guys are new around here and you haven't already accessed the free training, I do have a new free training. It's the 30-day Insta strategy and 1 hour training. It's really, really cool. As you guys know, I'm super excited about it. It's a 12-minute video of me going over this 6-page workbook. And it's just, so each page should take you about 10 minutes. It's really It's really simplistic, just because that's what I need in my strategies as a business owner. I need simple and not super complicated, but it's really, really powerful if you take the time to do it. So that's that's a weekly calendar, and that's the monthly calendar. So there's a bunch of stuff in here for you guys. So if you want to download that and access the free training, you can just go to the link in my bio, or you can go to brandstrategyco.com/freebie, and you'll just put your email in there and you'll get instant access to the training, and you can download the workbook, or you can just view the workbook and then write answers down in your notebook if you don't want to print it out. So yeah, questions in the chat box, bring them on in, and let's dive into, by the way, I have a really bad cold right now, so there's going to be a lot of coughing and like scratchy throats. So let's dive into why you should get personal on Instagram. So that's one of the concerns I hear a ton from my clients and students is, I don't see the point in sharing personal content. I'm a business owner. I should be professional all the time. I should talk about professional things, my business, my products, my services. I don't need to be getting personal on Instagram. I don't understand what the point of that is. And that's a really good question. Sorry, guys. And this is why I personally recommend it. And just as somebody who's tried it out and it had really good experience with it, this is what I found. So by getting more personal on Instagram, and I'll define what personal means in a second, but by putting myself out there a little bit more than what I would be comfortable with typically has completely changed my business. It really allowed my audience to get to know me. So whenever I'm posting on Instagram, they know who is talking to them. They know my face. They know a little bit of my background. They know my story. They know what I'm up to. And not only does that allow them to get to know me by sharing more of myself, but it also helps them create that genuine connection with me. So maybe they're a mom and they know I'm a mom. So like, okay, this girl has time for Instagram and running her business. I can definitely figure it out too. She has 2 kids. I only have 1. Like, I'll definitely be able to do this. So I'm going to, follow her more and have this connection with her more because I can relate to her, or whatever it is. Especially for you guys, if you can connect your story and your journey to your business and your products and your services and your audience, you have just such a winning strategy and a way to just really boost up your business and boost up your audience at the same time. So the other thing that sharing personal content on Instagram will really help you do is, like I said, it'll allow your audience to relate to you almost like one-on-one, like your friends, because they know exactly what your life is like. They know your name. They know what your voice sounds like. Even if you don't do videos or lives, they know what your tone is. They know how you speak to other people. They know your typical verbiage and the way your personality is as it comes out through your writing, because you're writing more than just, hey guys, what's up? It's Tuesday. Anybody else wishing it was Friday? LOL. And it's like, and that's it. So I highly encourage you to put more personality into your posts. That way people can feel like they can relate to you and know more about you. And then I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Putting yourself as the face of your brand directly on Instagram will really boost the know, like, and trust factor. That's really, really important because, for one, people buy from people. I'm just going to recite all of these like marketing terms at you. Know, like, and trust is basically the whole point of social media as far as I'm concerned, and as far as what I want my clients to achieve on Instagram and social media. I really want my clients and my students in my course, I want them to be gaining an audience that's not only engaged and interactive, but also really, really connected to them. Because, speaking to this quiet audience that doesn't really know you or like you or trust you, kind of what's the point? Because you're not going to get sales, you're not going to get inquiries, you're not going to get hired for things if they don't know, like, and trust you. So that's always the very first thing that you really want to think about is this type of content, is this going to boost that from them? Which I will get into in a second. And then this is kind of piggybacking on that last point. putting yourself out there on Instagram, putting that personal content, it really helps you like take off the mask. And whether it's like a professional mask or even like maybe a mindset mask, if you're just scared to put yourself out there, like nobody wants to hear from me, I'm just gonna hide behind my phone all day and just, pretend like I'm not actually doing this business. By removing that fear or the mask or whatever it is and really putting yourself into your Instagram and putting yourself as the face of your brand and sharing your stories, sharing your journey, it totally opens up conversation with your target market and your target audience. For those of you that have been following me for a while, you know firsthand, we've probably had conversations one-on-one, whether it's in my DMs or if it's on comments on my posts, like enough about me where you're then sharing with me about you, so I get to know you, which not only creates that connection more, but now I know more about my target audience, so I can create stellar products, stellar services that are going to just elevate my target market, my deal audiences, entire business. So I really get to cater to my audience because I'm hearing from them and I know what their struggles are, I know what their pain points are, I know the type of verbiage they use in their struggles. Like I totally have this two-way conversation going, so I can then package up all of my offerings in such a more enticing way that not only is it more enticing, which is important to get it sold or get hired, but in the long term, like in the long run, these products and services are going to help my audience more because they have been created specifically for them and requested by them instead of me just creating what I think everybody wants, which is really hard. I'm sure, as a lot of you guys know, it's really hard to create content for people when you're so close to it. Like you're so close to, oils. Hillary, I saw you in here. You're so close to whatever it is. It's really hard for you to know what you should be sharing, what you should be creating, what you should be teaching, what you should be selling, because you're so close to it that you don't realize there's people way back here that have never even heard of what you do or heard of the strategy that you're sharing or heard of Instagram or know what a double tap is. Like there's people that just have no clue. So by opening up that conversation, you really get to know your audience and feel like you're one-on-one with them, which is so, so wonderful to really have those conversations going. Thank you guys, that's so sweet. So for those of you guys that just popped in, ask questions. I'm going to get to all of them at the end. I like to just run through my content and then open up the doors for conversation and open up the doors for questions. If you have questions about what I'm saying, please let me know. And I am talking about how to share personal content on Instagram and how to know how much is too much as far as being personal. So let's dive into sharing personal content. So I recommend being very, very intentional about this personal content. I do not recommend just throwing anything out there for the sake of being personal or being vulnerable or getting likes or just like getting sympathy or whatever it is. It's not about the engagement, it's about the connection. So you want to be really intentional about exactly what you're saying to your audience. So whenever I'm getting ready to post something that I'm like, ooh, this is a little much, this is not my typical type of content, this is pretty personal, or this is even just like, it's not my typical happy-go-lucky post where I'm teaching, this is a little bit more inward where I'm sharing a struggle, or I'm even sharing a failure or something that happened in my life. I will run through this series of questions just to make sure that I'm totally on board with this content being out there to the world, because essentially the entire world can see it. So I ask myself, one, will this content help my audience in some sort of way? What is the point of sharing this content? So typically when I'm sharing something that's a little bit hard for me to get out, a little bit more personal, I want my audience to leave that social media interaction after they read it or see it or hear it or whatever it is. I want them to either feel motivated, I want them to feel inspired, I want them to feel educated, or I want them to feel like they can somehow relate to me on a different level, so they know me a little bit more. So if I'm going to share that content, I really want it to be purposeful and I want that connection. And like I said, they should be motivated, they should feel inspired, or they should have a little bit more education about what's going on. The second question that I ask is this content related to my business, my products, or my services? So instead of trying to explain what that means, I'm going to give a couple examples. And Hillary, I have an oiler example for you. So a good example of sharing content that's a little bit more personal, a little bit more vulnerable, that would be beneficial to your business and something that, depending on your comfortability, I do recommend this realm of topics. So if an oiler shares how implementing her essential oils has actually helped her fertility problems. So is that like a super vulnerable topic that's terrifying to share on social media? Absolutely. Some people more than others will feel that way, but is it something that is definitely past the line of like, oh, I could talk about this all day, any day, and it's totally fine? Yes. But there's a purpose behind it, because her job is to, share essential oils with the world and heighten people's lives with these incredible products. So what's the best way for her to do that? Well, she could talk about the benefits until she's blue in the face, or she could bring it back to her own life and what her big why is, why it's so important for her to get these oils out and share them with the people that she loves and that she connects with. And one of the biggest reasons is because it helped her X, Y, and Z, whether it's fertility problems or weight loss or any sort of health condition that's now healed or on its way or doing better. And I know you guys can't say that anything heals anything, but it feels good to share why it's so important to you. So that's a good example. A bad example of sharing, so like that's good personal content. An example of maybe bad personal content that doesn't have, it's hard to say that it's bad. I can't say that it's bad, but I would say that it doesn't seem very purposeful, would be, let's say, a graphic designer who's not like a lifestyle blogger or anything like that. She's legitimately just a graphic designer on social media. Her way of making money is getting clients to hire her for graphic design and maybe web design. Maybe she's sharing some pretty intimate details about her really recent breakup on Instagram, on her business Instagram. To me, I don't know if it's crossing the line, because we all make our own decisions, but I would say that and these are totally made up. If there's any correlation with real people, I totally made this up. So I'm not pointing anybody out, I'm just pulling this out of my head. But I would say that doesn't seem to have a direct correlation to growing her business, because she's being personal, yes, but it's not going to result in the connection that she necessarily needs unless somebody else happens to be going through a breakup and then also happens to be needing graphic design. Like there's too many dots to connect, I think, through that. So that's why I like the example of an oiler sharing a personal piece of content that's directly related to oils. So that makes sense. And then I also wanted to share, sorry, I'm so sick. I wanted to share my own example of what I've been sharing on Instagram, like from a personal standpoint. So for those of you that haven't been, I'm losing my voice. For those of you that haven't been following me for a while, pretty recently I've been sharing my fear of going live before now. So before, I think June was officially my first live. It might have been May, but I want to say June was the first time I ever went live on Instagram. And now you guys know that I've been going typically once a week live with everybody. So I used to have panic attacks before I would go live. I did 2 webinars in my entire life that were live before my Instagram lives. And the very last one that I did, I nearly had a panic attack. I got it together and figured it out. The webinar wasn't up to par for what I would consider my personality and my teaching abilities. It wasn't that impressive. And I had technical difficulties and was too nervous and in my head to even get out of it. So it went terribly. But I've been sharing that in my, on my feed within my different touch points. I did it on my blog as well, but I've been sharing about how I was terrified of Instagram Live. I was scared of what people would think about me and what they might say, and you're an imposter, and all these really deep concerns, and probably I would call them lies, because no one really cares ultimately. But I was really kind of digging through all these horrible old past judgments and things like that I had to deal with myself. But I've been sharing about that on Instagram for a purpose, because I want my audience to know about my newfound love of Instagram Lives, because it's a story that I really want my audience to be inspired by, because I want them to try out Instagram Live, because I've had so much fun doing it. I've had so much success from it. I've enjoyed it so much, and it's completely changed my business and my life. So that's why I'm sharing that really personal piece of content, and that personal story, that personal journey, to connect the dot to, hey, I know you might be scared. I was so scared, panic attack scared, crying scared, like I totally get it, but I got out of my own way, tried it, and this is what's happened. So that's my own example of like a personal piece of content that I like to share. I like to share things like that because my business is not about parenting, it's not about relationships or even lifestyle really. It's very focused on business for business owners. I don't share a ton about my actual very personal life as far as my kids and my home and things like that, because my audience is not always going to directly relate to that type of content. But they're certainly going to relate to being scared to go on Instagram Lives, or not having enough time to do Instagram and things like that. So I try to keep it, while I do put myself out there, and I'm definitely more personal than I've ever been on this platform, I still do it intentionally with purpose behind every post. So that's my own story. And then the other question that I asked myself before I post something was, will this content help my audience know, like, and trust me more? Which is pretty simplistic. Will it, won't it? And that's a really important question to ask. Thank you, guys. And then the final question that I ask myself before I post something personal on Instagram is, so this is actually, if you guys have been following me for a while, I've actually shared this concept before, but I've tweaked it because I realized my old way of thinking was, in my opinion, it was wrong. And I tweaked it just a little bit. So the question that I ask myself is, would I share this information in public with a stranger? Now, there's a difference between strangers. So for one, and this is what I used to say, would you share this information with a stranger that you just happen to meet in a coffee shop that you started a conversation with? That's what I used to say that I would filter my personal content through. Now I'm realizing that's not the same thing as what Instagram is. Because even if you're in person with people, you still see them and you get to decide if they know this information. You get to kind of use your intuition and feel them out. And typically you don't just blurt out this information with strangers, but it kind of comes up naturally. But with Instagram, people are scrolling and they see that content. They don't need to even shake your hand beforehand. They get to see all of it. So I decided to change that from, would you share this with a stranger in a coffee shop that you're having a conversation with, to, would you share this information if it were written on a sign on your forehead as you walked around town? So like, you don't get to say or decide who sees it, who doesn't, who knows this information. Like, it's just out there for the world. Do you feel comfortable with that? And I think that's a really, it's a very definitive difference between those two things. And I think that really helps me determine, okay, what do I want people to know about me? Do I want them to know that I used to be terrified of Instagram Lives? Like, is that okay for a stranger walking down the street to know that about me? Absolutely. Is it okay for them to know that I'm a single mom? Absolutely. But is it okay for them to know about X, Y, and Z, all of these things in my life? It depends. It depends on what it is, but not necessarily. So I definitely keep things a little more zipped up, I guess, when thinking through that thought process of, would I want a stranger walking down the street to know this about me? So that's my advice as far as figuring out where to draw the line and where, it makes sense to share more personal content. So, and then I also wanted to share a couple tips for leaving room for making those connections, leaving room in your social media strategy to have more conversation, have more real-time posts, have more, just putting yourself out there more. So a couple things that you can do, these are just more tips. This is a really long set of notes that I've got here. So you can share things like quotes, ideas, and then stories as they come along. So I like to leave blank spaces in my social media calendar. Even if I'm scheduling a bunch of posts in advance, I like to have blank days for when things come up randomly. Like, I went through some personal things this weekend, And then when I was posting for the first time on Monday, I was like, I don't know what to say. I'm going through all these personal things. Like, I don't feel like I want to talk about it. Should I talk about it? And then I was like, this is a perfect Instagram post. So it was so timely. And then I could say, oh, by the way, I'm going to talk about this on Instagram Live. So I left room for myself to bring like conversation into the story, like my story into the conversation. So having blank spaces in your strategy for things like that. And then I also like to do things like writing down captions in the moment. Oh, I'm really losing my voice. Hold on, sorry guys. It's a cup of tea and honey. Ooh, it worked. When I'm, I don't know, at a swim meet, or I'm in school pickup lane, can you tell I have kids? Or when I'm, falling asleep at night and something comes to me, or I'm like, this is a really good caption / topic to be sharing on social media. I'm going to write it all out right now. I'm not necessarily going to post it right now because I have things strategically posting for my best times. Oh, my voice is going. I'm wrapping it up though. So I like to write my posts as they come to me, like my captions. And what I do is I save them in Planoly, which is my scheduler. I save them in Planoly, and then I use a placeholder, which is just like a blank color. And I wonder if I can pull it up on my computer to show you guys. And it allows me to write my entire caption out as I'm inspired and then post it later when I have a blank day. Sorry, guys. So let's see. So sorry. So those are my captions. I gotta run, my voice is gone. Sorry, guys. DM me if you have more questions.